Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for joining this live stream chat. And in this chat, I'd like to talk about the issues surrounding executive hiring and the ramifications for the business sector generally, and how the financial sector has taken over the business sector in effect and is running all businesses strictly by the numbers, but without the expertise to run that business. Now, because of their power, their lobbying power, they can demand and get concessions from government, whether it be tax breaks or cartel pricing power or cozy government contracts. They can get many things just to offset their own ineptitude and to compensate for their ineptitude. But I'd like to go through just a few examples and a few scenarios just to illustrate the point of what's happening at the moment, and it's been going on for a few years. Now, there was a time when the CEOs, or certainly the VP level folks, were somewhat expert in running the businesses and managing the businesses that they were involved in. But not all of them were. There was always dead wood, and any job that pays a lot of money is very prestigious, seems to have this gravitational pull for useless idiots, but well-connected useless idiots, that is. But for the most part, the sergeant major type level, the upper middle managers up to VP and divisional general manager, most, not all, but most of those people were pretty good at their jobs. And I've met some really sharp guys over the years. So, but that's not the case, and it's less now than I think it's ever been. And that's not just down to affirmative action or quotas, gender quotas and race quotas and all that sort of stuff. There are other issues involved here. And there was an issue a while ago, and I won't say what country or what city it was in, but I'll use this to illustrate the point. Now, one of the quite a large organisation that where a big financial concern had taken a majority shareholding in it, and they then installed all their people in at the executive level, the board level, and so on. There was no one there who really knew anything about the business. They were running it by the numbers and making sure the numbers added up, and that's how they were doing business. And they were able to achieve monopoly or oligopoly circumstances and conditions in some of their trading areas that compensated them for their lack of expertise at the top. But anyway, they decided they wanted to hire an executive vice president who did have some expertise in this field and in this industry, and they went through a fairly laborious process. Now, one of the city's foremost executive search consultants, or that was the title that she had, came up with somebody and put this guy forward. Now, the guy was interviewed by all the board members separately and together, and they had dinners together. So the interviews, there was something like 20 plus interviews that went through, plus other things like aptitude tests and the like. So this guy was exhaustively examined and gone through, and there would have been 50, 60 plus interview hours that were put into seeing this guy. Everybody ticked off on him and said he was great, he was fantastic, he'd be a real asset to the organisation, and wow, they were so lucky to get such a heavy hitter, and so on. So he was given the gig, and through quite an accident, just a few weeks later, they discovered that not only had he never worked in that industry before, but he'd never had a job or anything like this job in the past. In other words, he'd bullshitted his way through the entire process. He'd had the buzzwords and the buzz phrases down pat, and he just wowed them all, and got through and got given the job. We're talking a job that pays a couple of $1 million a year. All the people that were interviewing him were paid $1 million a year plus. A couple of them were paid in the term $5 million plus. So these guys who paid this sort of money should have been the very best that industry had to offer, the very best quality people, really people who were at the top of their game and delivering great value to shareholders and so on. So how did this guy manage to get through so many interviews and convince so many people he was expert at his job, when in fact he had no expertise, not even the slightest little smidgen of expertise in this industry or at this level or at this job? Well, we need to sort of just separate and look at the process itself. Now, the The lady who is the executive search consultant was formerly a high-priced hooker, dealing with rich guys at the top end of town, and she wanted a little bit better. She wanted to seem I don't know, have a job that was more prestigious and more social esteem attached to it. And you'd be surprised how many hookers end up in executive recruitment. But anyway, she became an executive recruiter, and she still had contacts of the old clients that she had when she's a hooker, and then she used those clients to then do her executive recruiting for. So she somehow came across a guy at some party somewhere, and in any way that somehow she thought he was the business. He must have talked a good fight. I mean, so then she puts him forward. They review the CV, and there are telephone chats, and then he comes in for the interviews. As I said a little earlier, he has dinners with these guys, one-on-one meetings in a group, and interviews in a group, and they all say he's fantastic. He's a great find. Now, the reality is that none of the people that interviewed him themselves had any expertise in that field. None. They were just political hacks appointed because they were well connected into the financial establishment that had taken a majority shareholding. So these incompetent executives were put in at the top, and they were able to talk to this guy for hours and not pick up that he had no expertise. Now, I've got certain areas of expertise that I've been involved in for a while, and I've had plenty. I interviewed hundreds of people, and there are plenty of guys out there, men and women, that'll sit in front of you, claim to have expertise, but they've got none. And I can pick it up in a few minutes, maybe not even that long. And you ask a few questions. Well, how would you do this? How would you go about that? Let's talk about something. And then you realise that they either have no expertise in that area, or far less than they're claiming to have. And I don't think I've ever, if I'm going from memory, have ever hired somebody who didn't have the expertise that I thought they did when I offered them the job. So, but when you put people in charge who haven't got a clue, this is the sort of price you pay. These idiots interviewed this guy for hours, and then somehow he managed to bullshit his way through the whole process without knowing a thing. And I mean, obviously he checked up on a few buzz phrases, and he'd thrown a few platitudes around, but that was it. He just bullshitted his way through the whole thing. But he didn't just fool one or two of them, he fooled them all. He actually bullshitted his way through all of them. And we're talking a board of directors of 11, a CEO 12, the headhunter 13, the separate evaluator 14. So there are 14 people he managed to convince he was expert in something that he knew nothing about. So, but this is not necessarily unusual. Most of the people at the apex of most businesses now are really appointed by the financial, the big banks, the big financial institutions, by the big end of town. And some of the big investment funds and retirement funds, superannuation funds, they've got serious pull. So they can go to the board of directors and say, look, we want our man installed, or we want our people put in there. We want you to hire this guy and that guy. We want you to only do business with these people, and so on and so forth. So they can create this artificial round robin where they just fatten up the calf. But the reality is they're not doing good competitive business and delivering valuable goods and service to the community or the society or the nation or the customers or anything like that. They're really just running a little protection racket. It's a bit like the mafia in the the 1930s or something. So that's what's going on here, and there are a lot of situations like that going on. And if you look through some of the senior appointments that are made, and you can see this on business websites and that sort of stuff. You have a look at some of the senior business appointments made, and your jaw will drop. It'll drop so hard it'll bounce off the floor when you look at how minimally qualified or totally unqualified people are, and they're being given very senior roles, executive director here, executive vice president there, and very prestigious, well-paid roles, but they're not qualified. They're just part of that big finance end of town, and the patronage and the nepotism and the mistresses and the call girls and everything that go with that. That's where it's coming from, and it's a very, very casual sort of way of doing business, where as long as they've got the numbers, As long as they've got control of where the money moves and goes, then they're satisfied. That's what all they want, and they just want stooges and front men and women to sit around on boards and look good. But these people don't know how to run the business. They don't even understand the business, and that the financial sector doesn't require them to. So this is a big overhead that's being placed on business, and it comes at great cost. The financial end of town, they're still extracting their profits, but they're drawing that value away from the rest of the business community, and in turn, we're not creating the next generation of business experts who are going to make a big difference to our economy and the wealth of the West. So there's some things to ponder and consider. You've been with Tassos today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.